Virginia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Knight, you come from the Mercatus Center, funded generously by the Koch brothers, as was the Cato Institute. And I, of course, represent George Mason University, where you're located. I have a simple question for you. The Republican Conference Chair, Elise Stefanik, recently said people who are being imprisoned for crimes committed during January 6th are hostages. Do you agree, yes or no, that the people who have been arrested, tried, convicted, sentenced, and are serving those sentences are in fact hostages?
I have not studied that. My initial inclination is no. And if I can elaborate, I have not read all the transcripts of all the convictions, but I will assume the answer is no.
Thank you. I just find it interesting you can opine about amendments to the Constitution and infringements and warrants, but you haven't really looked at the issue of whether people who committed crimes in January 6th are hostages or not. Thank you for that moral equivocation. Officer Fanon, maybe you don't want to equivocate. What do you think? I mean, I'm listening to my colleagues, I'm listening to this testimony, and apparently you got it wrong. On January 6th, there were peaceful citizens simply protesting on behalf of their First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights, carrying Bibles, who had just assembled peacefully to express themselves here in the Capitol. Isn't that what you encountered on January 6th?
That couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, my encounter was brutal, it was violent. It involved a number of individuals restraining me, beating me, at least one individual, while I was being restrained, beaten, subjecting me to electroshock from a taser device on my neck, all the while resulting in injuries I sustained as a traumatic brain injury as well as a heart attack.
So, Mr. Tedesco talked about, among other things, law enforcement running roughshod over citizens, simply expressing their First and Second Amendment rights. I had the impression that, law enforcement that day apparently was violently seizing Bibles of good Christians who were simply trying to exercise their faith because we were targeting them for their faith. Is that what happened on January 6th?
Listen, I responded to the Capitol that day for no other purpose than to assist fellow officers who were calling out for help. I didn't care about the location, the Capitol building itself, and quite frankly, I didn't give a shit about the members of Congress. I just came here because cops needed help. That was it.
We'll pretend you didn't say that first part. By the way, just an by the way, because we've heard some interesting testimony again. In your how long were you in law enforcement?
20 years.
20 years. In those 20 years, were you ever made aware of any effort by the FBI or law enforcement in general to surveil the financial information of individuals because of their beliefs or views? Because that's what we're being led to believe has been occurring.
No, and I worked in collaboration.
I'm sorry, real loud and clear. 20 years of experience, have you ever experienced what they're describing?
No.
No. Would you find that odd if you did stumble upon it?
Yes.
Why?
Because it violates the very principles of law enforcement, upholding the Constitution and respecting Americans' rights.
So I'm gonna run out of time. First of all, I cannot tell you how much, even though I am a member of Congress, I was on the floor on January 6th. I heard it. I saw a lot. I cannot imagine what you've gone through and how you are still living through PTSD. My office was attacked last May, and we're still living through PTSD. And it was violently attacked. And I can only imagine. And you are a hero. And, no matter what the attempts may be of some to minimize, diminish, or even fabricate what really happened on January 6th, I assure you, there are a number of us who will continue to fight for the truth to make sure the American people know exactly what happened, and that we won't equivocate about whether criminals who are justifiably in jail for their crimes that day are not hostages. They're criminals. They violated the law. And I cannot think of a more significant breach of the Constitution than a violent attempt to prevent the free exercise of an election being counted here in the Capitol. I yield back.